That one.
Okay.
I think I might even just
Yes, and can we make sure all phones are silent?
Including mine.
All right, in 10 seconds to show. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Hi everyone, welcome to a joint production by the Brandon Gonez Show and Now Toronto. We are so excited to have you tune in. I'm Brandon Gonez, and as you know, I will be moderating one of the final Toronto mayoral debates before Decision Day exactly 1 week from tonight. It is basically now or never, folks. And as you can see, we have some very passionate candidates up here today. You guys are passionate, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. They're going to start talking about Toronto's future now, and we'll get to them in just a few minutes, but first I would like to begin with the land acknowledgement. I acknowledge that we are assembled today on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto, where I am, is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. My personal journey to truth and reconciliation includes a commitment to learn and relearn the truths of colonialism and genocide that were hidden for years and have had a profound impact on Indigenous communities today. I acknowledge that there is much more work to be done, and we all need to be committed to doing our part in the journey to truth and reconciliation with all Indigenous peoples. Thank you. All right, folks, I'm just going to point out and address a few things before we get started. Many of these candidates have been doing a lot of debating lately. We've heard you very loud, very clearly, but this is certainly not the first time that they are duking it out. It is the first time, though, that they're doing it at a spot like this. This is not a regular auditorium. It's not your regular corporate headquarters. This is a loft located right here in Liberty Village. This is our BG show and Now Toronto Loft, and we are very excited to have you all. Now, we don't look or sound like anyone else, and let me tell you something. We're proud of that. That's exactly how we like it. We have our candidates, as you can see, sitting on stools, like a few friends, hopefully, at a restaurant or a bar, grabbing a drink or a beverage together. And this is where we want you guys to get cordial, and we want, as an audience, to hear what you have to bring and say about our city, our Toronto. But I'm also a little bit different from all the moderators that you've probably seen. I'm not a political specialist. I definitely do not like political talk. We just want to keep it real and hear from you. Now, we're just going to keep it simple here. We're going to get down to business, and hopefully all of you at home will be able to decide who you want to run this city. Now, the rules here are also very, very simple too, okay? We drew for the sitting positions and the answer order for each and every question. We told the candidates the main topics, but we did not tell them the question. For most of this, I'll ask a question and they'll each get a minute to answer before we open up the floor for a 3-minute debate. I'll tell everyone when we switch it up a little to keep y'all on your toes. I also have this special power, the sole discretion to provide a candidate 30 seconds for rebuttal if they're directly accused by another candidate. That sound fair? Yeah. But I'll be using it sparingly, and hopefully it won't be necessary too often. And I really hope it doesn't come to this, but if things do get a bit out of control, a little bit loud where we're talking over each other, we do have a special bell in the room. And it does get louder, that bell, the louder it gets over here. But I do believe we're all going to keep it cordial. I love that. And one more unique feature of our debate tonight is that we will be taking questions from our online audience. Shout out to everybody watching at home right now, wherever you are across the city or potentially across the country. I don't know what you're going to say, so I hope you also keep it cordial at home, but we do want to hear from you because I know you want to hear from the candidates sitting on this stage right now. Alrighty. As we continue, after the formal debate, we'll hold individual scrums with each candidate and let reporters have at you guys. And you'll get to enjoy it all live and totally raw right here on the BG Show and Now Toronto YouTube channels. Now, I want to introduce the folks who are vying for your votes. We're going to start off with former MPP for Scarborough-Guildwood and former Education Minister Mitzi Hunter. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
We also have newspaper columnist Anthony Fury. Good having you.
Hey, Brandon.
We also have City Councilor for Beaches East York, Brad Bradford. Good to have you.
Hey, folks.
We also have Policy Analyst Chloe Brown.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks for being here. And we have City Councilor for Toronto St. Paul, Josh Matlow.
Hey.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you for having. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. There we go.
I'm glad you joined us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here too. And listen, if you're wondering how we chose the people sitting up here right now, since there are more than 100 people running for mayor, we picked the ones polling the highest at the time of our invitations. I also want to make mention this. We did invite Anna Bailau, Olivia Chow, and Mark Saunders. All three of them declined our invitation. Alrighty, well, let's get to it. You guys ready? Yeah. Question number one. We're gonna skip the opening statements because we've heard it many times through this campaign season, and we're gonna dive right into it with one of the most urgent issues facing Toronto residents right now. I know it, you at home know it, the candidates know it, and it's affordability in this city. We know rents are up more than 20% year over year, and the idea of buying feels just about impossible for many. Home prices have more than doubled in the last decade. There are obviously a lot of factors at play here, but here's what I want to know. What do you think is the biggest culprit, and how would you tackle that? Mitzi, you get 1 minute.
Sure. Well, Brandon, it's great format that you've created here today because we can get to the heart of the issue. And the fact is that the current approach has failed. It hasn't established one unit of affordable housing in terms of housing now that the city has had in place. And we have to change that up. When I talk to Gen Z, they are saying they can't see themselves living here because of the affordability issue. So I will unlock the public lands that the city already owns to build 22,700 units of affordable housing within 6 years. So people like one of my staff members, Daniel, can move in within that 6-year period.
All right, thank you so much, Mitzi. Up next, Chloe, you have 1 minute uninterrupted.
Yep. So one of the biggest issues is that the land hasn't worked for not-for-profit reasons. One of the greatest things that we've been seeing is the proliferation of condos, and that is because the government has given up its responsibility to build apartments and purpose-built rental that a lot of working class people need. So the for-profit industry has stepped in and they're building exactly what they're designed to do, which is for-profit units. What we need is community land trust, and what that is a legal framework for giving the land over to community groups, tenants associations, and a variety of not-for-profit groups to develop the land themselves and then own the apartments and the maintenance of it. We have seen with Toronto Community Housing what happens when the government owns the land but gives up its responsibility for it. So giving Toronto Community Housing and a variety of public land back to the public so that they're owning it and maintaining it is a part of my plan because we need to own the land and develop it ourselves.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Anthony, 1 minute over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. I'm the father of 3 small kids. I know what young families are going through, and one of the reasons I'm running for mayor is my wife and I grew tired of hearing young people say, we're not sure we have a future in this city. We're thinking of moving out of Toronto, things that people weren't saying 10, 20 years ago. My priorities as mayor to deal with the affordability crisis. Number one, I am going to axe the municipal land transfer tax for first-time homebuyers. It's the only single direct tool that the mayor's office has to bring down the price of homes. Also, I'm going to make sure property taxes stay below the rate of inflation. And why does that matter to renters, to home buyers, to everybody? Because don't forget, if property taxes go up a lot, fees go up a lot, landlords are going to pass that on to renters. So we have to make sure those costs are not pushed down even further. I'm also going to work to make sure we can just build more and more units, because ultimately we have a supply and demand problem. The longer it takes to build a new development, the more costly those developments will be in the end.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Brad, a minute to you.
It's a great question. It's top of mind for everybody. I hear every day young folks, new Canadians, families that are getting pushed out of the city, and I don't want you to have to move to Hamilton if you don't want to. And there's a couple problems. You focused on rental. We haven't built purpose-built rental in this city at scale for 3 decades. There's a lot of tax reasons for that. You know, we don't have access to long-term low-interest financing for people to build them, but what can the city do? Well, if we want to see more purpose-built rental, we need to make it easier to do that. We need to waive development charges on purpose-built rental when we're baking in affordability. We need to look at all the vacant office space in the downtown and provide opportunities for conversions to residential when you're providing affordability. And we have to speed up the process. I'm an urban planner by training. I worked in the chief planner's office. I saw the endless debate, deferral, delay. We have the slowest approval timelines, 3 years in North America. That adds time and cost to housing, makes it more expensive. We have to do it faster.
Thank you so much, Brad. Josh, 1 minute to answer the question.
Thank you. I agree with much, but not all, than what was just said. I believe that it needs to be a combination of using our public lands well to build affordable housing, a combination of rent geared to income, below market and market, but with rent control. We also need to incentivize through lowering property taxes for purpose-built rental for the private sector to allow for them to start building more purpose-built rental rather than just condos. We need rental supplements to make sure that people who are in poverty have a pathway toward housing. And we also need to make sure that we use every lever possible to ensure that there's different opportunities and different options throughout our neighborhoods for people to be able to afford a home that isn't just a $2 million single-family dwelling. City Council has moved in the right direction, but I think we need to do more to make sure that whether you want to rent in this city but rents through the roof, or even dream of owning a home one day, that there's different options for you to be able to do so.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you all for answering that question. We're now going to open the floor to a 3-minute debate, open debate. Again, the question is, what is the culprit, in your opinion, to this affordability crisis, and how will you tackle that and fix that? Go ahead.
I just think that what is happening right now is really not working because we don't see that affordable housing is being built. We actually see a lot of homelessness on our streets and people are falling out of the ability to maintain their homes. And so we've got to change that approach from the current model of developer first to one that the city is the builder, and it's what I've proposed is actually 77% would be affordable and deeply affordable housing. And that is going to make sure that there's a counterbalance to what is being built right now, because all we see are these very tall towers, very small units. They're not family friendly, and they're not building community or neighborhoods, and they're certainly not priced for young people to be able to see themselves being able to afford to live in Toronto.
So I would respectfully disagree with that. You know, the idea that building more bureaucracy is going to build more housing is the exact opposite of what we need to do. We need to make it easier to work with the not-for-profit sector, to work with co-ops, to work with land trusts, to work with the private sector builders to bring more housing. The model needs to be a cross-subsidy model where the market units cross-subsidize the affordable. That's how we can actually deliver on it. We need to do a lot more, and frankly, the city hasn't done a good job today. But again, it takes so long to get through the approval cycle that we're not delivering the types of units and the supply of units that we need. And we also have to recognize that the market in Scarborough and Etobicoke and North York and downtown, they're all different. This is a 640 square kilometer, very big city, and one-size-fits-all programs don't work because the land values are different neighborhood to neighborhood. So you can actually deliver more affordable in a downtown where the land values are higher than you can in other parts of the city. And the program to date has just been one-size-fits-all. And so you're right, like housing now has felt like housing never because we haven't seen any shovels in the ground after 5 years, and that's not good enough.
I'm so glad that they agree with a lot of the policies that I've been putting forward, because land value tax is a huge part of why we have empty lots that are not incentivized to develop. We have a lot of property owners subsidizing empty and vacant lots because there's a one-size-fits-all tax approach, and that's why I want to take development out of the hands of government and give more community groups access to the developers so they're working together to develop this housing on their own. As you can see, like, council has been slow because their interest has been chasing votes as opposed to making the process easier. And this is where I'm trying to come on as a technology-focused candidate to make sure that we're getting all the data and using it for the user as opposed to for like the government, which has been reporting and just tracking. They're not thinking about the end user, and that's why I'm really pushing for people to own the land, and then government supports that development through facilitating the negotiation for mixed market units, so for-profit and non-for-profit on the same land.
I want to agree with Chloe on the need to invest in and support land trusts. There's an amazing group in Kensington Market that's working on that right now, but they're lacking a couple of $1 million just to move forward with the purchase to be able to sustain some of the reliable, affordable rental that they want to have in that community. Similarly, there's a group called Black Urbanism TO in Little Jamaica that's just needing investment from the city to be able to control more of the destiny of Little Jamaica rather than those who have owned it for far too long. So I believe that if the city can, whether it be through the multi-residential acquisition fund, it's called MURA, or through community benefit charges or other mechanisms that we have, if we can invest in those land trusts, that will give at least a startup for communities to actually be the driver and City Hall can be the vehicle.
Thank you so much, Josh. That does conclude that 3 minutes of open debate there, but we are talking about housing. We know it's a big issue, and we know that the housing bull run has not only benefited investors, but it has also benefited developers and people who already own a home. The government cashes in every time someone buys and sells a home in this city. Toronto is actually the only major city where you pay the land transfer tax twice, once to the province and once to the city. That means the more we buy and sell and the higher the price that we buy and sell at, the more money in the city's pockets. So we're talking billions of dollars here. Now, if you are serious about making housing more affordable, how do you plan to make up for the loss in revenue, especially since we're already facing a $1.5 billion budget shortfall? We're going to start off with Josh. You have 1 minute to answer this question uninterrupted.
Well, we do have a $1.5 billion shortfall. We're facing a $46 billion pressure over the next 10 years. And we're going to need to do a combination of things to be able to get the budget in order to be able to then invest in whether it be affordable homes, safety, and the services that have been declining for far too many years. It's not one answer to a complex problem, it's several. One, we need to raise revenue, and we need to be honest about raising it above the rate of inflation, because that's what it's going to take to be able to make ends meet and provide the services that have been declining. And to raise the standards, frankly, for everything from snow clearing to maintaining the parks to helping the most vulnerable. We're going to need to manage our budget better, and frankly, there's wasteful spending that I've been calling out that I want to be able to have an opportunity to tackle. And then ultimately, we're going to need a new deal with the province and the federal government. But the go-along-to-get-along approach with Doug Ford has got to change, because he's bullied Toronto far too long, and I'm going to be taking an approach to make sure that he understands that he's going to have to deal with a partner at the table rather than a city that's going to capitulate.
Thank you so much, Josh. Anthony, you have 1 minute to answer the question.
And you know, Brandon, your question was so great, because pointing out that Toronto is the only jurisdiction in Ontario that has a double municipal land transfer tax. And I think it was wrong that it was brought in the first place not too many years ago. I can't believe City Hall is already addicted to the revenues from it. This thing should not be in place. Now, it's hard to get rid of the whole thing. I wish we could, but I've said what we're going to do is just get rid of the municipal land transfer tax for first-time home buyers. People talk so much with enthusiasm and passion about buying their first home, and it should be a celebratory moment, but instead government looks at it and says, oh, they're popping the cork off of the champagne. Let's go in there and steal $25,000 from them while they're celebrating. No, let's stop doing that. And this is an election about priorities. And if people say housing affordability is a top priority, which they do, then we need to make that a priority in our budgeting process. And we need to reallocate things that way, to respect the wishes of Toronto residents and acknowledge this is a priority, and I will axe that municipal land transfer tax for first-time home buyers.
Thank you, Anthony. Brad, 1 minute to answer the question.
On affordability.
On affordability, or how would you fill that $1.5 billion budget
It's
shortfall?
a good question, and it's top of mind for all of us. And you know, I think for the first time in a municipal election, this is the ballot issue that folks are talking about. They are deciding when they go to the grocery store what groceries they're putting in the shopping basket. They're going to food banks more. They're struggling whether or not the check that they're writing for rent is going to clear. So now is not the time to go out to people and ask them to pay more. That's why I've committed to keeping property taxes at or below the rate of inflation for folks who are renting. It was pointed out that gets passed through on your rent as well. We can't make it more expensive to live in the city. Now, we have to get more juice from the squeeze. There's no reason why the ferry terminal washrooms are not open when we're not running the ferries. That's not a revenue problem, that's an accountability problem. I will usher in a new era of accountability at City Hall with mayor's mandate letters so that each top civil servant has deliverables, responsibilities, and they're accountable to the people of Toronto. I will also move forward with open tendering, where we can save the city $200 million a year.
Thank you. Chloe, 1 minute to you.
So the City of Toronto is one of the biggest purchasers and facilitators of entrepreneurship in the country. And one of the things that I'm looking at is helping commercial tenants through the public land. And this is where we can offer them deep discounts for their rental costs and help more businesses come into the city, therefore create more higher paying jobs. And when we look at a sector like healthcare, we could be offering healthcare workers and cooperative businesses spaces on public land. It's now about us activating the air rights above community assets like our paramedic stations, our fire stations, our libraries, and our community centers. We could be building workforce housing across the city to bring back workers and create new business opportunities for them. This is where I really am pushing for community land trusts to give people more rights over long-term tenancies, because the biggest issue here is that our land does not work for modern purposes. It works for my parents back in the 70s, but modern kids cannot get opportunities because the land is still stuck in the 70s, and what it does for us is not relevant.
Thank you, Chloe. Mitzi, 1 minute to answer this question.
So Brandon, this is definitely the issue that I hear as I go across the city. Just in 3 different parts of our city, I heard about food insecurity, that people are just so sticker shocked at the price of food. They can't afford it. They're looking at things and they're putting it back on the shelf because they can't afford it. And so we have to be a city that people can afford to live in. And I have a plan for that. So I have a very transparent approach to raising the revenue that we need through my 3 and 6 plan. So it's a 6% across the board increase, similar to what the city has right now at 5.5. But for those earning under 80,000, it's half that. It'll be below the rate of inflation at 3%. And for seniors, they actually will not have an increase in taxes if they're at 80,000 or below, or they can defer it as well. So this is an opportunity for us to really recognize that people are hurting and we have to act.
Thank you so much, Mitzi. Thank you all for answering that question. We're now going to open the floor to a 3-minute open debate. Again, we're talking about affordability, and in terms of fixing that, also understanding the fact that the city does rely on that money. We're dealing with a $1.5 billion budget shortfall. How do we fix that? What is your plan? Go ahead.
And you know, Brandon, I'm really concerned at this talk of tax increases that a number of candidates have made, because the bottom line is the budget of the City of Toronto has grown 50% in the past 10 years. But I ask most people, do you feel like you're getting 50% more services, more value? They say, no, I feel like I'm getting less. The basics are not being done in the city anymore. Public transit, fixing the potholes. So I have pledged that as mayor, as soon as I get into office, I'm going to commence a full program review, a full audit of the books, and I'm going to let taxpayers see everything, because right now they can't see everything. And we've got to have those conversations. We've got to do the spending review, the program review, before we even begin to talk about tax increases or these whole new taxes that the city councilors sitting here have actually voted to proceed with in studies: municipal sales tax, road tolls, commercial parking levy.
Brandon,
we just can't do that.
If I may, it's just every election, there are politicians who just pander and say, you don't need taxes, and we're just gonna cut, and everything will be fine. But they don't tell you what they're gonna cut. They don't tell you how it's gonna affect your life if they do it. And the reality is, yes, you need taxes to pay for the services.
I'm not
yes,
going to raise
you need
people's
to manage
bills, Josh. That's how it will affect people's lives. I'm not going to make life less affordable for Toronto residents.
The reality is, though, that if we're facing, as we are, a $1.5 billion shortfall, and the last mayor raided the reserves, right? The cupboards are empty.
Josh, you were on council all that time.
And that was
Any
a
fiscal mismanagement.
Well, it's actually
it's
actually a strong mayor budget, right? So if we're going to face the $46 billion pressure, this isn't the time that we can just let go of the revenue that we have, given that people want their snow cleared.
No, I'm talking about the new taxes that you voted to create, those sorts of things, your commercial parking levy, really high property tax increases that you just acknowledged.
I understand that.
I'm not talking about, I know we're going to have to raise property taxes. I'm talking about all the extra added fees that you want to put onto people's daily lives. But you have not put forward a plan, with all due respect, you have not put forward a plan to actually address affordability, safety, or improving services. Yes, I have.
Well, show me the math, because I have not seen anything
Brandon,
that makes sense.
I would just like to say, you know, the capital costs are mounting. We're talking about the operating costs, but there is a massive capital backlog, and we can't afford to leave money on the table. Taxpayers expect us to do more, and that's why moving forward with open tendering, like every other municipality in the province, where we have transparent public bidding processes for those municipal infrastructure jobs. The City of Hamilton saved 21%, double-digit savings in the region of Waterloo. Toronto runs a closed shop where only a select group of unions can bid on those jobs at the expense of all the other unions. We could save $200 million a year with open tendering, and I think that's the kind of money that we need to be focused on right now, because that's a lot of money that would make a big difference.
If I can add to the conversation here, that, you know, and I've put forward a fully costed plan to fix the 6, because we need to do more to fix the crumbling infrastructure and the issues that we face in our city. We can't necessarily do all of that without negotiating with the federal and the provincial government. So I have put forward a plan for a 1% off the HST, would bring about $900 million to Toronto, and actually all cities across our country would get a piece of that, so they can go forward with their local priorities as they need to do. So the federal and the provincial governments can also do more.
All right, thank you all. Thank you all. That concludes our 3 minutes of open debate on that topic. And now we're actually going to move on to a quick lightning round here. Before we open the debate section, where you will get a chance to elaborate on the topic of home ownership, which I still know is a big topic. This is why we're dedicating so much time to it. But we just want one-word answers for this part. It's yes or no? Okay? I will remind, just yes or no. Here's the first question. Will you raise property taxes above the rate of inflation? Yes or no? Anthony?
No, no, no.
Just one word. Brad?
No.
Josh?
Yes.
Mitzi?
Yes.
Chloe?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, second question. Do you own a home? Yes or no? Anthony?
Yes.
Brad?
The bank owns it. Huge mortgage.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Mitzi?
Yes.
Chloe?
No.
Third question. Are you a landlord? Yes or no? Anthony?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Josh?
No.
Mitzi?
Yes.
Chloe?
No.
Thank you all for answering those questions. So one group of people that is having a very hard time with housing affordability, and affordability in general, is young people. We can all agree on that, right? Many who do not own property and are renters. Many people, including families, businesses, and employers, are worried that young people won't be able to stay in this city, and we will lose the next generation of workers, talent, culture, and innovation. So here's my question for the open debate. What would you do as mayor to ensure young people have the opportunity to thrive in this city? You have 3 minutes, you can all go at it.
So this is where land trusts become a really important issue. We need to transfer land ownership to a new generation. If we are going to build sustainable economic futures, it's not just about residential tenants, it's commercial, it's industrial. We need to have mixed use spaces where everyone has a chance to work from home, play from home, and also have care built into the structure. One thing that I've been noticing is that there's a desperate need for childcare spaces, elder care, and they could be built into these new residential lots. It's just a matter of implementing them. So instead of waiting for government, we need to put the hands in the power of communities who want these things. And I see this need desperately in Toronto community housing, where they're already selling the land, but they're not including the community in developing the needs assessments.
It's a
And
co-
this is where
Sorry.
This is where
Please.
I really see the opportunity to build the capacity of residents as better civil servants, because they already are living on the land. It's about turning these rent geared to income programs into rent to own programs, so that these rental payments are going into the ownership of units, and that pays off the long-term lease on the building.
But we can do both, right? So the plan that I've put forward, in fact, has the rental housing units that will stay city-owned, but there's a component that will be home ownership, and it would be sold at 50% of the market, so that the young people that you talked about could aspire to own one of those units because they can afford to do it. That's why the city does need to become the builder, because the private sector does not have that incentive or bottom line to do that. That's where the city can step in.
Mitzi is right, as is Chloe, and it's a yes and, right? It's not, there's no one solution, right? It's about having a component of the public build to be student housing, right? It's about ensuring that there's home share programs where older adults can supplement their income by having younger people have like $500, $600 rent by living in their homes, helping with chores. It's good for everybody.
And for all
there's
of
lots
these-
of, there's, if I may, just to complete the thought, there's just so many different things that we should be doing, including, to follow on with what Chloe was saying, whether it be NORCs, naturally occurring retirement communities, or having more complete communities where you've got childcare and services and infrastructure and parks, we should be planning our neighborhoods more comprehensively. So as we grow, everyone has what they need to have a great quality of life and age well.
This is the challenge, though, right? All of these are really good ideas, and we ought to have been doing it. But the bureaucracy and city planning has said no to these things. Now, we just ended exclusionary zoning. We brought forward a program where we've introduced more housing options for more people in more neighborhoods, multiplex across the city. But that just happened. There have been entire neighborhoods of this city that have been off limits to anything other than a single detached household.
And I would argue
So-
that council is the one that creates the bureaucracy. So if council does not have the incentive to move faster, then city, like, what is staff going to do?
Yeah,
Council needs to work harder.
Let's talk more action. So we're doing that, but that's the first step, and we have to do it across
Yeah.
Toronto. And when we
City
want to
needs a
have
new
age-friendly
approach.
communities,
New approach,
when we
Brad.
want to
What's
have,
happening
when we
isn't
want to have,
working.
I'm just speaking. When we want to have more housing options, more rental opportunities for young folks, for seniors, for people who want to age in the community, it's going to take different types of housing stock across the whole city.
Thank
That's
you
a
all.
practical response.
And that concludes the 3 minutes of open debate there, and we're going to have to shift gears now from housing. So let's talk about, unfortunately, crime, right? It is a fact of life in any big city and has been a fact of life right here in Toronto. But let's be honest. What seems to be a little bit different now and what's really causing people to be a little bit fearful is the very public and random nature of a number of these serious crimes. So we're talking attacks in schools, on transit, or streets. So here's my question. Why do you think past efforts haven't been effective, and what would you do differently? 1 minute to Brad, uninterrupted.
Well, I think we require a comprehensive approach. And the reality is we had 700 fewer frontline officers today than we had in 2003. 20 years ago, the population's grown by 1 million people. So we need more frontline officers so that you're not waiting on hold 8 minutes for a 911 call or waiting half an hour or longer before someone shows up during an emergency. But when you talk to officers, they'll be the first to tell you they are not best equipped to be marriage counselors, to be mobile crisis response teams, to do social work. So we need to have programs in place that do those services better. And that's why we need to build mobile crisis response teams across the city. We're standing that up now, but it's long overdue. But we need to make sure that we have the right response in those emergency situations so that people can get the help when and where they need it.
Thank you, Brad. Chloe, 1 minute to you.
One of the biggest issues that we've been facing is the rapid deterioration of social safety nets. People have mental health issues, they have disabilities, and the majority of people that we're seeing on the street are the disabled. So we need to build accessible units within residential developments because we have a baby boomer population that's about to face dementia and Alzheimer's. How do we help them, and how do we make sure that they're not violently approached and dealt with when they're on the street? We need to make sure there's transitional, accessible, and also short-term healthcare services in residential buildings. So making sure that when we have our shelters, we're making sure there's mid-term and long-term housing options. That's the only way to solve this. So a housing first option where we're taking modular housing and supportive, making use of the parking lots and making sure that healthcare is there so that we're transitioning people off the street into short-term, into mid-term, and then into long-term solutions.
Thank you for answering the question, Chloe. Mitzi, you have 1 minute. How would you tackle crime?
It's the reality on our street. I've actually, in the last year and a bit, I've been to 2 high schools in Scarborough where teens shot each other to death. And this is not something that our school community should be experiencing, but it is our reality. Not one principal or student or parent has ever said to me that we need more police officers. What they say is that we need to invest in our young people. We need to invest in those things that can actually lead to a life away from crime. And I've long been an advocate for making gun violence a public health issue in Toronto so that we can get to those violence intervention programs, whether they're hospital or community-based, and invest in the youth. I'm expanding our public library system to include 14 more youth hubs. So there are youth-friendly spaces that they can go, have a snack, do art, be creative, and grow up safely in our city. We have to be able to do that. We can't see this escalation and randomization of crime, including on our TTC as well. I have a plan to do that as well.
Thank you, Mitzi, for answering the question. Josh, you have a minute.
Yeah, I've long championed the approach to address the root causes of violence in our communities, whether it be expanding youth programs, youth hubs, ensuring that there's trauma counseling, homework help, employment opportunities so that kids really do see a genuine path that's good for them and good for their community. And on the TTC, I agree with many of the comments that were made that we need to take an approach that just focuses on efficacy. We need trained individuals who understand how to de-escalate individuals with the potential violence before a tragedy begins. And ultimately, they need to be mental health crisis responders. Police officers are just not the ones who are trained to deal with that, to de-escalate before it begins to the same extent. Now, there is no causal relationship between how many officers you have and the crime rate. In fact, between 2001 and 2012, we had fewer cops and, we had more cops and more crime. Chicago's had the same experience.
I'm going to have to wrap you up there. That's 1 minute, but
I'll
we are going to have that
continue
open 3-minute debate. Anthony, a minute to you, uninterrupted.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I've been saying this election is a time for choosing. Do we want Toronto to go more in the direction of of those awful scenes we see in American cities, Seattle, San Francisco, home here in Canada, downtown Vancouver, where the drug crisis is playing out so acutely on our streets, it's spilling over and it's causing trouble for our families, for children, on public transit. You know, police officers, health professionals, they tell me that so many of these random attacks on our streets and on public transit relate to the drug crisis, which is why, as mayor, I will phase out those drug injection sites and halt the plans of City Hall to create new ones, and instead replace them with treatment centers, because a compassionate society doesn't keep people on drugs, it helps get them off of drugs. And by helping those people reclaim their lives, we will help make our families safer. I'm also going to hire 500 more police officers. Sounds like a lot, but it actually just brings us back to the head count in 2014. If we could afford it then, we can afford it now. And this is what everyone is saying is a priority, a more visible presence of law enforcement on our streets, in public transit, and in our communities.
Thank you, Anthony. That's a minute. We are going to open this conversation to a 3-minute open debate. Again, we're talking about why hasn't past efforts helped in reducing crime, and what would you do to tackle it?
I just find it so, it's such fear-mongering to just say that it's all the drug problem. There's a reason that people are using drugs. There's a lot of trauma in our society. We need to actually address the root causes of why this is happening.
Josh, children being harassed, people being attacked is not fear-mongering.
But of course that's
why
wrong.
Do you call
that's unacceptable.
The concerns
but
of parents in
Kensington
Market
just to say that drug use is the reason.
It's not fear-mongering.
It is.
What's going on in our parks? What your constituents are telling you is fear-mongering, Josh?
It's actually simplistic and shallow, and doesn't actually address the root causes.
Well, go ahead and tell people that who are concerned with this. I don't think they're shallow to have these concerns,
Anthony,
about
it just
this
sounds like you're
lawlessness in our
pandering.
streets.
It sounds like you're pandering to people who are scared, and I get why they're scared.
Josh,
so
people
let's
are
actually
scared when there are needles in the playgrounds. People
So
of all political backgrounds, all across the city, are concerned about it.
Let's prevent that from happening in the first place
by clearing the parks of the needles, clearing the parks of the detention campus.
It's not that it's shallow.
I
don't think that's fair, but it's simplistic.
Yes.
Because it's not just a one, solution and then everything is solved. It's much more complex. It's much more nuanced than that.
I know, and that's why you said you're going to let the encampments stay in the parks for
I did
many
not
years.
say that. No. I can actually. I'm right here.
Stand up for parents and
Anthony,
families.
I am right here, and I can speak for myself.
In fact,
not only can I speak for myself, I've written down the plan that I have to fix the 6, which includes adding 2,000 supportive housing shelters.
Which takes years to be built,
to supportive housing units.
No,
not at all.
I will
exactly. I will acquire those units to make sure that people. Can I just finish my one thought here, because I want to correct the record.
And I got to correct the record.
I want to correct this record because I did not say that. Right? I said that we were going to get people off the streets, out of parks, out of ravines by providing 2,000 supportive housing units with the wraparound care and support that people need. We can acquire those units. We can partner with nonprofits. I have a housing background. In fact, I was a chief administrative officer for the largest social housing provider in this country. And we can do better.
Let me ask.
And we can do better than the approach that you've talked about.
A little girl who can't play in the Kensington Market playground because of needles in the parks, how many years will she have to wait until she can play in the park without
the city
needles?
actually has programs in place, and I've seen them. I come from a community where we have those shelters and where people have to provide the support, the safe areas. So we've got to make sure that those parks are safe for everyone.
Let's do all of that, but I'm going to put families first and the needs of children first. I'm going to make sure that the parks are clear of needles and encampments, and I'm going to do that first. I'm not going to say we have to wait years until we can prioritize family safety concerns.
Alrighty, well, that's a wrap on that 3 minutes of open debate, but we are going to continue talking about crime, and we're going to talk about the people who are funded to fight crime, which is the police. But I want to talk about defunding the police, because defunding the police and putting more resources into community supports is an idea that's been thrown around quite a bit. But we haven't actually seen the police budget get cut. It's the single largest budget item in the city of Toronto. So here's my question. Would you reduce the police budget? And if so, by how much? You each have a minute for this. Chloe, we're going to start with you, uninterrupted.
So the police budget is currently at 1.3 billion. I would take the 300 million and invest it in the Toronto court system. If we really want to talk about creating justice outcomes, this the province currently has a Justice Center initiative. They're working with the police, restorative justice advocates. There's this really big opportunity to create diversion programs so that we are taking people and creating outcomes with the victim and the offender so that we're building impact. And this is where I'm really focused on making sure that victims, offenders, we're all a part of the justice solution, because if we don't have community support and integration, we always go back to this cycle of violence and poverty. So it's really about us integrating the whole community and making sure that there's supports baked in, because a lot of the crime and violence that we're seeing is unmet needs and empty social nets. So this is where it's like fund the community, give them the restorative supports they need and the mental health services.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for answering that question. Anthony, you have 1 minute uninterrupted.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I've never called for defunding the police, and I don't support defunding them. And I think right now we do need to invest a bit more in our officers. I am a fiscal conservative, and I do think if we can find more efficiencies in the police budget, we should work to do that, just like I'm going to do at all departments at City Hall. But ultimately, we're suffering from a classic case of cause and effect. The reason why police just can't respond to calls like they used to, the reason why people have so many public safety concerns is we have far fewer officers than we did 10 years ago, despite the fact the population has grown. So we will need to be investing more in our police force. I have called for a non-core services hiring freeze at City Hall, and I'd like to be able to transition some of the headcounts from the big bloated bureaucracy at City Hall over to core services like policing, like fixing the potholes, and other sort of basic reasons why we pay our taxes in the first place.
Thank you, Anthony. Mitzi, would you reduce police budget, and if so, by how much?
So I do not have a plan to reduce the police budget. I would keep it at the rate that it's at right now, including the addition of more officers. I believe the budget calls for 200 more officers because we've grown as a population over the years, and we want to make sure our population stays safe and that the police is doing the work that they need to do, which is the response to violent crimes and to keep our community safe. I actually quite like the community safety programs and the foot patrols and the bike patrols, because that's getting closer to the community. As part of my TTT safety plan, I want to see those patrols around the transit stations as well and keeping those hubs safe. I also like the community mobile response teams. I know there's one in Scarborough in my community through Taibu Community Services. They're doing a fantastic job of responding to those mental wellness calls that are needed rather than a police officer showing up. So, let the police do what it should do and let the community do its role as well.
Thank you, Mitzi. Brad, you have 1 minute to answer this question.
Yeah, I would agree. I would not be cutting the police budget, and in fact, additional investment is required to get us back to where we were years ago. And the reality is, I hear from folks all the time making those calls, looking for an officer to respond, and they're not there, or the delay is very long. So we need to get back to where we are. But it also, the way the city is changing, we do need to provide investments in other types of services. In the mobile crisis response teams, I think Michael Garron Hospital was one of the first in the city to stand that up, where you're partnering social workers and nurses with police officers to respond to those mental health calls. You get better outcomes. And again, we need to have police focusing on doing frontline police work and mental health crisis responders focusing on those types of services. The neighborhood police officer program has proven to be a very effective model, building trust and relationships in communities and getting better police outcomes. I will be making sure that we continue to invest in those across the city, because that's a better model going forward.
Thank you, Brad. Josh, 1 minute to you.
And by investing in community response programs, expanding it to be a full first responder, like our police, EMS, and fire, we can relieve pressure off 911, emergency response, along with the police themselves so that they can do what they're meant to do as a police service. But what everyone seems to forget is that we have a $1.5 billion shortfall. We've got a massive pressure. So we cannot allow the inflationary costs of the police budget, which is 1.16, along with other top line items, to continue going up the way they have. So I'm going to freeze that. I'm going to be stabilizing top line item budgets, including the police, and that will save us $115 million that we can invest directly into community programs to address the root causes of violence in our society. Along with, we need to be ensuring that that team is on the TTC to be there when there are potential incidents of violence. In other words, we can't just say we're going to do it all and not recognize that we don't have enough money to do it.
Thank you, Josh. All right, we're going to open up the floor to a 3 minute open debate. Again, the question is, would you reduce police budgets? And if so, by how much?
Can I elaborate on my point? So one of the things that I've noticed about our police services is that they're used ineffectively. We see a lot of police on construction sites, film sites, directing traffic. We currently have police sitting in cars while they could be on the street being visible. We really need to make better use of their time and their talents. And I do not disagree that the police are being used ineffectively. We have them sitting in ER rooms with mental health patients. They are not being used because council is not using them. And this is why it's really important that when we talk about defunding the police, we talk about the history of city councils and governments defunding healthcare and education, and in its place raising funds for police to protect them from the consequences of that. So that being said, when I talk about taking $300 million out of police budgets, it's looking at the overtime that we spend a lot of money on, and it's also looking at how we can use police stations, paramedics, and fire stations to build apartments and bring police and EMS back into the city, because we are subsidizing a lot of their out of city living costs. So when we look at the police budget, there's a lot of overspending, and we need to rein that in.
The point there, though, is it's actually a really complicated issue. There are provincial requirements about why you need to have an officer at a construction site. And while we would agree that's probably not the best use of their time or anyone's time, city council does not direct and control them and tell them what to do with
Then
respect to those
advocate
things.
to the province to
which
change it.
which we have. But it's just like, I'm just pointing out that's not something that council can unilaterally control. And we
Then
do that
continue.
advocacy. And the other challenge is, 90% of the police budget is staff and salaries. So we're going into what will be provincially arbitrated contract negotiation with emergency services. The police are included in that, I believe, at the end of this year. So when we talk about holding the line, it effectively means reducing staff and reducing officers, because that will be done through provincial arbitration at the end of this year. City council doesn't do that. We don't negotiate that contract. And it's an important reminder that, for all of the candidates, you've got our biggest collective bargaining agreements with 416, Local 79, these are some of the big unions at the city, ATU 113, that's transit. All of these bills are coming due, and they're not going to be 0% increases. So the police are the same. 90% of that staffing is 90% of the budget is staffing. And so when you talk about holding the line on that, on a contract we're not even negotiating, it's done through the province, that would effectively mean cuts.
And Brandon, can I just say that pretty much everybody running against me for mayor talks about the only options are cuts or to take more money from people's wallets. But I'm saying I'm going to be the pro-business mayor who goes out and supports young entrepreneurs, who tries to grow the economy. BIAs have asked me, are you going to travel to American cities with us to be the ambassador-in-chief for the local
But they've
economy?
also asked for more
grow the
safety in
economy?
their area,
And
like
yes,
the
I am,
downtown
Brandon.
community
I'm
area.
committed.
They've asked for that too.
And I'm going to get them that, but I'm committed to growing the economy. So when we have these conversations about how we're going to pay for more officers, which everybody wants, a more visible police presence, we don't have to do it through taxing people more. We can do it through growing our economy, and we build the wealth, we share the wealth. I'm going to be laser focused on that.
Thank you all.
I just don't even understand that. When you say growing,
You don't understand growing the economy? I'll talk to you about it later.
Anthony,
You got to have pro-business
but how does that
policies,
reach?
Josh.
But how does that reach then the Police Services Board? Like, you didn't connect the dots. It's
you
good
all.
rhetoric, but it
Yeah.
doesn't actually function.
Thank you all.
Do I have the opportunity to respond to the...
There wasn't a serious accusation there, but I appreciate the passion on all ends. But that does then conclude our 3 minutes of open debate. And we are going to move on to another lightning round, where I will name an existing project or plan, and you say whether you would keep it as is or change course, which could mean fighting other levels of government or reversing decisions that have already been made. Afterwards, you will get time in open debate to explain. I promise, okay? So here we go. Here's the first plan. Would you keep or change moving the Science Center to Ontario Place? Mitzi, keep or change?
It's a bad idea. I would
Keep or change?
keep the science center where it is and reverse that decision.
Or change the plan.
So change. So you change that plan.
I would change it.
Okay. Josh?
Yeah, I would keep it there and change the plan, of course.
Whoa, I'm confused by
Sorry.
the options here. What?
It's plans to move the Science Center to Ontario Place.
It
Would you
should-
keep that plan or change that plan?
Oh, I would. Sorry, I want to change Doug Ford's plan to move it downtown.
Right, that's it, to Ontario Place.
It shouldn't go to Ontario Place.
Okay, you want to move it downtown. So you're changing the plan.
No, sorry, this is confusing. I want to keep it in North York. Simply put it.
So Ontario Place is downtown.
Yes.
Yes.
It is. It's on the waterfront.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to just reiterate the question. Plans to move the Science Center to Ontario Place. Would you keep that plan?
I would not keep that plan.
Thank you. Listen, this is why we have this format. We're clarifying everybody's
Who's
position.
on first?
Anthony, keep or change?
I want to consult with the people.
No, keep or change?
Keep.
Brad,
Change the plan.
keep or change? So
It's the way
change.
it's worded, Brandon. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Keep the science center where it is. Change the plan.
Okay. Would you prefer me to ask, would you want to keep the Ontario Science Center at its current location?
Yes, in North,
Okay,
in
Mitzi?
Flemington Park.
Keep.
Yes.
Keep. Okay, keep it there. You want to keep it in North
Yeah.
York?
Yes.
Josh. Anthony.
Yes.
Okay. Keep.
That was
Yeah, it's keep or change, so I'm gonna go with keep. Brad.
keep.
Chloe.
Keep it where it is.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Construction. And like I said, we're having drinks here, right? We're gonna have some construction plans for the Ontario line. Will you keep the current plans or change them, Mitzi?
Change.
Josh.
May I answer with a little nuance?
We're gonna have an open debate.
No nuance.
Change how it's done.
Change. Anthony.
Keep.
Brad.
Keep.
Chloe.
Keep.
Alrighty. Recently implemented TTC service cuts. Would you keep those changes or would you change that plan? Mitzi.
Change.
Josh.
Change.
Anthony.
Change.
Brad.
Change.
Chloe.
Change.
Okay. Now let's open this up to 3 minutes of debate, open debate on why you would keep or change any of those plans.
May I just, because I did add a little nuance on the Ontario
Go
line.
ahead.
I would not actually advocate to change the Ontario line, but the way that Metrolinx does their work is just reprehensible. They don't work with communities. They have been responsible for shutting down businesses along Eglinton where they've been building the crosstown. They have had a boondoggle where there have been years of delays, cost overruns, and while I support the Ontario line being built, I would want to ensure that we provide far more oversight and challenge the provincial government to do better. When it comes to the Science Centre, it is so shameful that Doug Ford would just lift up the Science Centre and move it downtown away from a community like Flemington Park and Thorncliffe Park, where kids rely on it for educational opportunities and local residents rely on it for jobs. When it comes to selling off the Greenbelt to his buddies or even privatizing Ontario Place and opening up a private Austrian spa,
So
we
I
need
would,
to
Brandon,
challenge
if I
I'm
them
can
to
going
do
to come
better.
back and bring it back here.
If I can interject here, I said the other month that I would be, as mayor, I will sue Metrolinx for breach of contract and damages over the fact that they have persistently failed to deliver on the clauses that they have to the people of Toronto. We
The city would
understand there's
sue
going to be
Metrolinx?
some delays, some cost overruns, but there's
gonna
been a
create
failure
more.
on the part of council and incumbent councillors to hold Metrolinx's feet to the fire. And by holding them to the fire in this lawsuit, I'm also setting the tone that while I'm really looking forward to being a partner with Mr. Ford and Mr. Trudeau on building more transit
You know what
options
doesn't
in
help
Canada,
build transit
I
is
am
more
going to make
lawsuits.
sure. I am
what
going to
doesn't
make
help
sure.
build transit is more
I am
lawsuits.
going
You can
to-
do it afterwards, but that's just
Actually,
like
Brad,
going. You can
as
do
you
it
know-
afterwards.
as you
But
know,
what
hold
I
on.
will say, no, hang on. Let me
Well,
come
you're
in here.
interrupting me,
Let me come
so-
in here.
okay, keep
And what I'm saying
interrupting.
is, Metrolinx, as Josh pointed out, has not done an effective job on delivering transit here in the city of Toronto. And whether we're talking about the Ontario line or we're talking about the crosstown where 140 businesses have been closed, anyone who is years and years, 3 years delayed and billions of dollars over budget, and they can't tell you how they're going to fix the problem, they shouldn't be in charge anymore.
And you did nothing about it as a councillor, and I'm going to do something strong about it as mayor.
No, that's not true. We have actually had lots of advocacy towards the province and echoed the concerns of citizens, residents about the Eglinton Crosstown not being completed.
Yeah.
And in
But-
fact, lots of
but we
concerns
didn't-
about where we're moving with the Ontario
we
line.
didn't blow
And so the idea
whistle
of
loud
saying,
enough. I think that's part of the problem
Yeah.
here with respect to
a great
Metrolinx.
point.
It's the province with the Minister of Transportation has to be held accountable for this project and needs to be called out. I mean, the people along Eglinton, the businesses and the residents, they're waiting. They call it the Loch Ness Monster because they never get to see one of the trains go across that track that has been laid for so many years.
and so we actually need to work together. You were in the province. You were actually at Queen's Park. So we should all be working together to.
Yeah, so I was part of the
we-
government that got the project started, but that was 5 years ago.
But you're still
and
there,
it's still
and you can hold the
delayed.
government to
Well, I've
account.
actually resigned my seat to be the mayor
Couple
of
weeks
Toronto.
ago.
All right, thank you all. Thank you all for that passion and context for that open section. We live in a beautiful city. We can all agree on that. And I'm sure we all want to see a unified Toronto. But it is hard to quantify because there is a general feeling that Toronto is more divided than ever by politics, by wealth, neighborhoods, race, so many things. So how will you unite this city and its many different peoples, its communities and perspectives so that we can all work together towards a better Toronto? Anthony, I'll start with you. You have 1 minute uninterrupted.
Well, Brandon, I mean, I get what you're saying, but respectfully, I think people are coming together right now in this election. I mean, it's just been such a privilege and an honor to run for mayor, go across the city, meet with people from all walks of life, knocking on doors, going to events, and we're hearing common themes right now. I'm not hearing a lot of division at the door in terms of priorities. I'm hearing people who say they want to deal with public safety. They're very concerned about those issues. Affordability. They want us to go back to basics, get the basic services working again when it comes to transit, law enforcement being there to enforce the laws. That's why I have said a visible police presence, no more taxes. I'm going to phase out those drug injection sites, and I think there's people who are all across the political spectrum who those key priorities are resonating with them right now.
Thank you, Anthony. Mitzi, how will you unify Toronto?
Yeah, that's why I'm in the race, and I'm from Scarborough. It's where I grew up, and I've had the chance of representing our community for the last decade, and I want to make sure we bring that outside into City Hall to give a stronger voice to everyone, so we have a city that works for everyone everywhere in our city, and that actually starts with the services that people receive. Affordable housing, I want to build 108 housing units right across the city. These are family-centered neighborhoods, 2 and 3 bedrooms, so people can afford to live in our city with parks and playgrounds and daycares and libraries, satellite libraries in those facilities. They will act as community hubs. This is about bringing our city together and making sure that the people who live in our city really feels that City Hall is listening to them, that we're fixing the potholes, we're making sure that the garbage is picked up, that the city is clean and beautiful, and that we can actually afford to live in Toronto.
Thank you, Mitzi. Josh, 1 minute to you.
You know, there are a lot of common issues, whether it be safety, affordability, the services that we rely on, whether it be snow clearing, park maintenance, etc. But there are unique differences. And geographically, I can tell you that we need to expand transit throughout Scarborough. We need to make sure that areas like Central Etobicoke have a community hub. We need to make sure that you know, in Scarborough, there's 25% of our population, but only 1% of donations to healthcare, to hospitals go there. Very few of the art grants dollars go to Scarborough. There are priorities throughout this city that are not being met and people feel forgotten. Neighborhoods like Rexdale have not had enough community services invested into that neighborhood. And I'm determined as mayor to make sure that every corner of the city sees themselves represented at City Hall, and that City Hall goes to those neighborhoods and serves them.
Thank you, Josh. Brad, how will you unify Toronto?
You know what? I agree that you listen to Torontonians. They're telling you about their concerns for affordability, safer communities, and congestion, unlocking the gridlock. Those are the 3 things that I hear about across all 640 square kilometers every single day. However, how you experience the city is very different. We all have different journeys, different life stories, different circumstances. And how I experience the city is very different than a lot of folks out there. And so we need to do a better job of listening. We need to have more empathy in our leadership. And we need to make sure that regardless of where you're living, whether it's Etobicoke or North York, Scarborough, or Old City of Toronto, you have access to housing that you can afford. You feel safe when you are taking transit. And when you need to get across the city, it's not an absolute nightmare. And so some of the positions that are being put forward from different candidates represent a very specific view, a very downtown view that neglects the experiences of people living in different parts of the city.
We can elaborate more in the open debate. Chloe, a minute over to you.
As a kid who grew up in Rexdale, what the city really wants is accountability from City Council. And it's been one of those issues where year after year we hear the rhetoric of roots of violence, fair representation, but it never happens because government never makes its way above Bloor. And this is why, as the candidate that's been running for a year now, I'm really trying to move past representative government and put more power in the hands of communities. Community-centered governance is the only way out of this. They have trusted councillors, mayors over and over, and they have not delivered. People want to feel like active shareholders in the decision-making that happens to them. And that means giving them fair access and ownership over the land, data, and decisions that are happening at council by restoring power to Etobicoke, Scarborough, and North York with uptowns, midtowns, and downtowns, because they deserve the same things that are happening within these 4 square blocks that are his downtown core.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you all for answering that question. We're now going to open up the floor to 3 minutes of open debate. Again, the question is, how will you unify Toronto?
I think that saying the words of Etobicoke and Scarborough doesn't make the community believe it. I think we have to do things differently by moving investment into those communities and into those neighborhoods. One of the things that I will do as mayor is actually move the council meetings to each of the former boroughs in our city, so that actually all the councillors, especially those downtown, can experience what it's like being in those neighborhoods and hearing the concerns from those local residents, and making it easier for local residents to actually attend and participate in those council meetings directly with the city government that makes decisions that affect their lives, like who is prioritized for getting access to public transit. You know, it was very difficult under the previous councils to get that investment into Scarborough. It kept ping-ponging around council, and that caused years of delays in getting that subway built. That was something that I championed consistently and dedicatedly for the last 10 years. And as mayor, I will make sure that this city is an inclusive one and it works for everyone, everywhere, in every part of the city.
People need to get out of the echo chamber of City Hall, and they need to go out and spend time in Scarborough and North York and Etobicoke and hear from people directly. And I can tell you, this journey of the mayoral campaign has been a real opportunity to hear from tens of thousands of Torontonians. And they will tell you that they don't believe the way to unlock congestion in the city is to tear down the Gardiner and put it at grade. They will tell you that we can't build more housing that people can afford, with more bureaucracy that causes endless delays at City Hall and makes these projects more expensive. And they will tell you that, you know, the safety on the TTC, they will feel safer if we have a security presence and mental health supports on transit. And yet council has been so disconnected from these conversations because they're too concerned with the echo chamber of Twitter and whatever's trending online. So we should be out in the communities more often. We should be hearing from Torontonians. And I think that's a great idea to have those meetings across the city. We should be doing more of that.
And I don't disagree. I think they should just give the communities more money, because they've outsourced their responsibilities to corporations and third parties, and this is the issue. Communities are ready for power. They lack the money, they lack the infrastructure, and it's not just putting the power in the hands of council to do it, it's actually paying the community activists, the workers, living wages, giving them land to build apartments so they can house themselves. The government is a stagnant bureaucracy that will not evolve unless the citizens have a civic education that is evolving. That is why, as the candidate that's been running for the year, I've been delivering civic education as opposed to chasing popularity, because I understand that I cannot do this forever. We need to prepare a new generation of leaders, and we can only do that by giving them the same resources that I had to run.
All right.
Are we done this?
We're basically done. If you have a quick thought, I'll give you 5 seconds.
Well, there's been this establishment under John Tory that you know, there is sort of this friends club that does well off City Hall, and I am concerned that there might be a mayor, if things don't change, that will bring their own sort of establishment into City Hall and run the place the way that they want to. And I think it's just incumbent upon any mayor to be open to listening to differing views and really try to arrive at a resolution that builds the city as a whole rather than just imposes their view on everyone.
Thank you, Josh. All right, that concludes that 3 minute of open debate. That bell was ringing, so we gotta get to our online questions here. And shout out to the online audience watching. We're hearing that the numbers are extremely high, so thank you for everybody watching at home. Here we go. Nikki wants to know, how will you make the cost of food more manageable for families? Josh, I'll start off with you. You have 1 minute to open.
So the reality, like, to be right up front, no mayor and no city hall can just promise that they're going to unilaterally bring down the cost of food. There is inflation that we are all experiencing that doesn't have its roots at City Hall alone. That being said, though, there are things that we can do to mitigate the cost of living in the city. I have a plan to, for example, open up libraries on Sundays that are currently closed for programming for seniors, for youth, for families. Similarly, schools, after hours. We've got these wonderful public buildings in the heart of our communities where there are a lot of us who just need a place to have our kids get active and be involved in their own lives. We need to make sure that that happens. We can also bring down the cost and improve the reliability and safety on the TTC so that people who rely on it every day don't see everything just going up, including just being able to get to work or to school. So there are things that we can do, including as we plan, ensuring that there's grocery
we'll have 3 minutes of open
stores
debate,
in
and so we
neighborhoods
can get
as well.
more context
Yeah.
there. But Mitzi, a minute to you.
Yeah, this is, as I said earlier, I heard this in 3 different parts of the city from different communities wanting the city government to help to bring down the cost of food. And there are some things that we can do to make it more affordable for people. I will be, for instance, Cafe TO, the city's current council, some of the councilors represented here, increased the cost and made it more difficult for those cafes to add patio space and add service to their customers, which passes on to the cost for the customers. So I will cancel those fees and reverse that to those customers because we need Main Street to be lively and an integrated place for us to have a successful city. I will also add some capacity to our community support programs so that our school nutrition programs can be expanded and we can make sure that our students are having nutritious food, nutritious snacks. The library hubs that I'm providing for youth will also have some programs there for young people because food security is a huge issue and it's a growing one, and that's why our food bank has run out of food.
Thank you, Mitzi. Anthony, a minute to you.
Yeah, Brandon, I was really surprised to see that the city councilors running against me for mayor, including Anna Bailau, had voted to direct staff to proceed with the next steps on the municipal sales tax, a whole new category of tax that would invariably increase the price of food, increase the cost of living. I think that is just a reckless decision to go ahead with during an affordability crisis. And my promise to the people of Toronto is there will be no municipal sales tax, no new tax category when I'm mayor.
Thank you, Anthony. Chloe, you have 1 minute to answer this question.
I would relax zoning so that commercial vertical farms and hydroponic farms could exist in the ground floor of residential buildings. I would also change the funding grants that are going to food banks and have them perform to create urban farms in the food bank spaces. We have indoor spaces that we could be growing in, and while it may not bring down the cost of all food, we could be growing fruits, vegetables, and a variety of goods inside. It's really a matter of paying urban farmers a living wage and making sure that they have the space to do it. In the city of Toronto, we have Black Creek Farm, we have Fresh City Farms that is at Downsview. It's really a matter of making sure that the land is changed to modernize. And this is where policy is really important because as a policy analyst, it's really a matter of me changing the policy so that the land is doing this for the public. So in Brooklyn, they have a urban farmer in residence program where they have a commercial farm at the bottom of the building and the farmer gets 3 months rent off to maintain it. We can have those programs. It's a matter of us working with the working class to deliver.
Thank you, Chloe. And Brad, 1 minute for you.
I appreciate Josh off the top said, look, local government is not the level of government that's going to go into laws and reduce the cost of, a loaf of bread. That's just being honest. But we do have an impact on affordability. And that's why I made the commitment to keep the property taxes at or below the rate of inflation, because it's an affordability crisis. And when I hear about food insecurity, that's a challenge. That's really what they're saying. They're saying when you add up the rent and you add up the cost of food and getting around the city, at the end of the month, it's a cash flow challenge. And I don't have enough money. And I've met families that are making decisions about what they're buying at the grocery store, or they're going to the food bank more often. So what can we do? Well, there are a lot of things that we can do to protect and fight for affordability in the city, but endless tax increases are not going to be the answer to that. A lot of good ideas here around vertical farming, relaxing some of the zoning. That's not going to be a panacea for improving the food situation here in the city of Toronto. Those are incremental things that we can do in communities that will help, but that is not going to be the widespread solution to driving down the cost of food at the grocery store.
Thank you, Brad. And I'm going to open the floor up to 3 minutes of open debate, and you guys can talk more about those plans.
I want to echo something that Mitzi said, because I just want to make sure that we really focus on this for a moment. We are seeing unprecedented demand on our food banks. We've never seen more visits to our food banks ever. And I do believe that while we can't do everything, we need to do more to ensure that our food banks have the means to be able to provide the supply that people are just desperately seeking today. And that might mean increasing grants to allow them to be able to do their jobs in this emergency situation. It's mitigating, it's a Band-Aid, but ultimately what we're seeing coming out of the pandemic is more evident poverty, more trauma, and more demand on our food banks than ever before. And as mayor,
And you
and I
can't
hope
tax your way out of it, Josh. You raise the property taxes, you'll push more
Anthony,
renters into poverty.
This is
We got to
something
grow
that we
the
should all-
economy. You can't tax your way out of
it's
it.
a great line, and I know it's your talking points.
And it's
But
true.
I'm talking about something very sincere. And if we all of us should pledge as mayor to work with our food banks to make sure that they have the means to be able to provide for our most vulnerable, because the lineups are going around.
I would say actually, Josh is right in a sense, but Neil Hetherington, Daily Bread Food Bank was very clear, like they don't take money from government, actually. And a lot of us would probably assume that food banks are looking for grants or government funding. What they want is predictable arrangements with government in times of crisis, like a power outage or a snowstorm, when they have to run generators 24/7 to keep those freezers operating so that they can continue to keep the frozen goods frozen so they can get out to the communities that need it. Having a relationship with the city where we recognize that they are providing
Yeah, and
that
sometimes in
emergency
kind.
service. I think you said emergency services.
Sometimes in kind.
So that is a way where we can work with food banks and make sure that they are covered when, frankly, we as a city are depending on them to provide those emergency services. But it's not additional grants being funded to the food
I
bank.
would argue that if the provincial government can subsidize the growth of pot, they can subsidize the growth of
Sure.
food. It's a matter of policy advocacy and city council actually putting the needs of the most vulnerable first. So this is where it's really a matter of us relaxing the zoning to make sure that urban farming and vertical growing, hydroponic, and a variety of growing options are available. One of the biggest issues at the food bank is the lack of nutritional food. We need to create these options using rooftops. You can use parking garages, vacant buildings. It's really a matter of connecting
So-
people to growing options, and it's about the city putting the money into the technology, which is called agricultural technology, to make sure that this is contained and it's done well.
So I do support,
Brad
can I
is
just say
correct.
one
Please,
thing? Because I
real quick.
definitely support everything that Chloe has said, including the neighborhood farms, fridges, and those types of things. We have to invest in them. I also believe that the issue about cost of food is tied to housing. And making housing more affordable and deeply affordable is something that we have to do for people in the city. Because people are choosing between eating and keeping a roof over their heads. And in a city as wealthy as Toronto, we shouldn't be experiencing that.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. We are going to go to one more question that we have received online. And here is the question. How will you address mental health and drug issues and strategies for all citizens in this city? Each of you has a minute. Josh, we'll start off with you.
Well, this is another scenario where we need the provincial government to return to the table and invest in ensuring that people have access to mental health care. I know people who are upper income brackets who don't know how to navigate the system, let alone people who are in our parks and on our streets. But what the city can do is ensure that when we have youth hubs, and I've successfully opened 20 throughout the city, we need to make sure that there is access to trauma counseling, in particular in this case for our youth. We need to make sure that there are wraparound services, not just shelters, but wraparound services so that when we do provide care for people, that they have access to the services, whether it be addiction treatment or mental health care, so that they can get onto a path toward, and I agree with Mitzi, toward housing, and then provide rental supplements and supportive housing opportunities for people so that they can live the lives that they're meant to. If we invest in safe and healthy communities, then all of us prosper. And
Thank
that
you,
is going to
Josh.
be my determination as mayor.
Thank you, Josh. Mitzi, a minute for you.
Well, this is an issue that escalated during the pandemic. I visited CAMH quite a bit in my research and preparing my platform. And when we had everyone sheltering at home, what happened was people who were homeless and who were experiencing different types of crises, they went to the hospitals, they went to CAMH and other places. And so we have to do something about it. I have a plan, a 5-point plan that includes having a chief mental health officer in our city to help to coordinate across our different departments the response to mental health and addictions and substance abuse in our city, which is actually playing out in homelessness. I want to make sure that we have a coordinated strategy. There's some unfinished work that needs to be done. We even need to invest in technology so that when there's a need to respond, someone isn't spending time trying to find the service. It's just there, automatically coordinated, and we have the technology to back it up. We've got to support people, and especially young people at this time.
Thank you, Mitzi. Anthony, what's your strategy?
Brandon, it's a great question. I think it's one of the defining questions that the city faces right now. Do we want to head more in the direction of those awful scenes in Seattle, San Francisco, downtown Vancouver? Do we want to say, no, we can turn our city around with all the supports that a compassionate society would offer, but at the same time saying, we're going to stand up for families. We're going to make sure that society doesn't further slip. These things we're seeing in our parks, the fact we're distributing even more drug paraphernalia, taxpayer-funded crack pipes, crystal meth kits, not just downtown, but into family shelters now in Scarborough and North York and Etobicoke. All of this that's going on our streets, this carnage here that people of all political backgrounds, all walks of life, they want to see a change. I'm going to phase out those drug injection sites, replace them with treatment centers, work with our partners in law enforcement, the province, and public health to do that, to turn our streets around. Children should not have to see needles in their playgrounds. I've seen it as the father of 3 small kids. I hear from so many parents who see it. We can't allow it to happen anymore.
Thank you, Anthony. Chloe, you have a minute.
So to build off of Anthony's point, there are people with addictions that are family members. We can't just give them rough withdrawal treatments. We have to have safe consumption sites that are connected to transitional beds, that are connected to midterm and long-term housing solutions. It's not just a one-off. So this is where I'm really trying to push for a public health and safety commission that will be working with public health, that will be working with a variety of actual nonprofit healthcare cooperatives to make sure that healthcare services are in buildings. We need to make sure that our nurses, our social workers, they are a part of the neighborhood and they're living closer to the people that they could be treating, because we have people with addictions that are housed. We need to treat them before they become homeless. So making sure harm reduction is everywhere and it's centered at all that we do would take care of the drug issue, and it would also make sure that people don't fall through the cracks when they're pursuing help before things get worse.
Thank you, Chloe. Brad, what is your strategy?
I sat down with the folks at CAMH and they really reiterated 2 points. 1, the connection between mental health crisis and trauma and substance use. And 2, the defining stabilizing factors are housing and access to income, a job. And so, building off of what was just said here by Chloe, I think that's right. It's not just one thing or the other. A lot of municipalities in Canada have just moved forward with safe consumption. We actually know that's important, but we're only doing 1/3 of the work. We don't have the programs in place to help with the transition and then ultimately breaking the cycle of addiction. And then beyond that, making sure that folks have access to good employment, good jobs, and the dignity of a roof over their head. And that is why supportive housing is so essential. I have built 59 supportive housing units in my community. It wasn't easy. The easy thing to do would be to fearmonger and to stigmatize. That's not what I did. I built those 59 units with the wraparound support so that people who needed a little extra help got it, and now they've made a successful transition into the community. That's the way forward.
Thank you, Brad. All right, we're going to open this up to 3 minutes of open debate. Candidates, go right ahead.
Yeah, Brandon,
I'd like to compliment Brad. Brad has had some incredibly difficult conversations with the community that he represents. People would have loved to just throw people out of his own community, people who needed support. And while I'm running against Brad, I've got to commend him where it counts, which is that he had the courage to stand up in difficult rooms with difficult people and say, we need to do the right thing. We need to do the ethical thing. And I think we should all agree, including you, Anthony, that needles in parks are unacceptable. That behavior that puts fear into people.
That's the first time you said that, so thank you, Josh.
Of course they're unacceptable.
Thank you.
Of course they're unacceptable.
Thank you.
But we can't villainize everybody who has an addiction.
Nobody's been
vilified. We can't just suggest that they're going to be just jettisoned out into
This is
outer
about
space.
listening to parents, not mocking their concerns, which is what you've been doing the past
some of these
couple weeks.
people who are in our parks right now who have addiction, They are parents. They're somebody's kids. We can't just
I
pretend.
live 2 blocks from Moss Park. I talk to people who resided there every day. I used to do that walk up from my condo building up to the Post Media building. We'd have very human conversations
But do
every
you
day.
understand the way
These
that
are
you
people-
talk, like the hyperbole that you use?
Josh, go
suggest
talk to people dealing with this who
I
live near
do,
these
I
parks.
do.
Don't mock
So-
what they're
But you
saying
know,
as
but
hyperbole.
mocking them,
what you're
Anthony.
doing,
If I could
Don't
just say-
call what they're
but
saying
you're
as
demonizing
hyperbole.
Can
and
we
you're
just,
villainizing these people.
Josh, you are dismissing what's going on in
No.
the streets of Toronto right
No,
now.
I validate what's going on, but I
Go
don't
meet
believe,
with these people.
But you
The
don't need
Kensington
to,
Market School emailed you too. You didn't go. I went to
I just
hear
want
their
to introduce
concerns.
just
Anthony,
one other
it's the
thought
rhetoric
here,
that you're
I
because
using.
saw the email trail. You didn't go when they
Anthony,
had
one
concerns.
of the risks that we
Anthony,
have
that's not
in
fair.
the approach that you're proposing.
You're using the isolated
Can I
example to
say
suggest
something
that-
just a minute,
Nancy, go
because
ahead.
we've
Josh,
got
I'll give you 30
No,
seconds.
no, it's fine. It's
Okay.
well.
No,
At the end, to get that, but
Because
let's
I
let's
do
get
want
you
to
in
say
here.
that the accountability and the responsibility here is for lives, right? You're talking about families and children and neighborhoods, and we all agree that's what our city has to be. It has to be safe for that, but it also has to be safe for vulnerable people. There are people too that deserve human dignity,
not safe at
and
Allen
they
Gardens who live
and they
there.
deserve dignity.
Violence,
It's
sexual abuse,
Listen,
at those encampments, Allen Gardens
whatever
is
it
not a
is,
safe
whatever
space,
it is,
Mitzi. We have to
people-
clear up that
Let me
encampment.
just finish my
People
thought.
are being abused
I
at
want
Allen
to finish
Gardens
my thought.
who reside there.
I would like to finish my thought, Anthony, because I have seen this. In the work that I've done as an MPP, people have died.
Those encampments are not safe for the residents
I'm not
as
talking
well.
about keeping encampments.
Yes.
I have an affordable housing plan. I have a supportive housing plan. I have a comprehensive plan.
You guys
I'm
are all
talking
attacking me
about-
for saying I'm going to clean up the
Anthony,
parks and I'm going to put
No.
families
What's the name of the
first.
park in
and
Kensington
deal
Market?
with what's going
But
Tell
you're
us
on.
the
not
name of
putting
the park.
forward a credible
Seriously,
plan on
do
how
you
would
even
do
know
it.
the name of the park,
You're
Anthony?
actually opposing the supportive housing in Willowdale, which is exactly the type of solution that we need to move people out of parks
That's
and
not
into
correct.
housing. It is. We've
I'm
campaigned
opposing
on it.
Alright.
the creation
Alright.
of the drug injection facility in front of a seniors complex.
That's not what it is.
Willowdale
It's
Manor.
supportive housing. This is
City
literally what we're
staff,
talking
Candidates,
about.
City
Thank
staff
you.
have said there's going to be drug
Thank you,
injection on
Anthony.
the front
Thank
lawns
you.
of that senior
Thank you.
complex.
This is
Thank you.
dishonest.
Thank you.
This is
And
entirely correct,
Thank you.
Brad.
Thank
You
you.
should know.
This
You're on
concludes. This
council.
concludes.
That's
This
what staff
concludes
said.
the 3 minute
It's
of
true.
open
This
debate
is
on
the
this subject.
stigmatization and
But
fear-mongering that we're talking
hold on. Our next question might actually give you a bit more time to contextualize some things, because we're going to do a little twist on the traditional closing statement. All right. This mayoral election has been doing the most. We have over 100 people running. That's a lot of folks saying a lot of different things, both about themselves and about their opponents. You see where I'm going with this? Okay. It can get a bit confusing all at times. This is why we're here, seeing as this may be one of the last opportunities you have to clear anything up. I'm going to ask each of you to share what you think has been the biggest misconception or false narrative about your campaign or your persona. And I'm inviting you to debunk that and share your truth. You get 1 minute each, and there will be no debate at the end. Alrighty? Fair? Brad, you get to go first. 1 minute.
I think that folks feel that City Hall is disconnected from the issues that make a difference in their day-to-day lives, and I would tend to agree with them. I'm an urban planner by training. I used to work in the bureaucracy, and I saw it every day, a lack of accountability, divisional silos, the attitude that whatever doesn't get done today will get done tomorrow. It's not good enough. Torontonians are tired of waiting. I ran for council in 2018 to fix that. And after being there for 4 years, I've seen more of the same. Endless debate, deferral, and delay. The fact that nobody wants to make a decision, they just want to punt the issue down the road, especially when they're difficult issues. And it takes courage to stand up and do what's right. I am for practical solutions that will make a tangible difference in people's day-to-day lives. There's a lot of campaign promises out there from my opponents that are going to be very expensive and are very disconnected from the real-world challenges of implementation. You will get real leadership that will make a difference in your life from me when I'm elected as mayor.
Thank you, Brad. Anthony, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, Brandon, I was a newspaper columnist, broadcaster for over 10 years in this city, and I think that is an asset. When people say, you haven't served on council, I say, well, yeah, that's my selling point here. I wasn't one of the people who broke it. I believe I can come in with a fresh perspective and outside eye and be one of the people to fix it. Because as you know, Brandon, when you're in the media, you're talking with people, all different expertise, all walks of life, and they're really giving you a sense of, you can have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the city and what's going on with issues. issues, and you harness those voices, you empower them to join you at the mayor's office, to bring all the voices in that have been left behind. I'm the father of 3 small kids. I know this city. I love this city. Toronto is a city worth fighting for, and it is not compassionate to keep this stuff going on our streets here, seeing us move in the direction of places like Seattle. We got to turn Toronto around, and I believe together we can fix this.
Thank you, Anthony. Chloe, what is the biggest misconception about you or your campaign?
The big misconception is that I have no experience. Meanwhile, I was an intern in 2014 during the Rob Ford era, where I watched most of the top 6 dance their way around Doug Ford. And here I am in 2022, hearing the same cast promise change, and I just can't believe it. And this is where I'm really putting myself forward as a faceless public servant who is enjoying being behind the scenes to expose that, yes, things are broken, but they can be fixed. As a policy analyst, I'm usually the one advising counselors. As a policy analyst, I'm ready to make sure that we are strategically applying for this vision and getting the other governments to work with us and for us.
Thank you, Chloe. Josh, 1 minute to you. What's the biggest misconception about you or your campaign?
It's often been said that I didn't sort of go along to get along with the mayor, whether it be Rob Ford or John Tory. And that is true. But it wasn't just to be oppositional. There were actually many things that we worked on very well together. I'm very proud of my work on the Toronto Senior Strategy, implementing the Youth Equity Strategy, Rent Safe to protect tenants, expanding sidewalk snow clearing, expanding youth programs, and so much more. But I wasn't prepared just to say, tell me how to vote on everything when I disagreed with it, when I thought that it was wasteful, when I thought it was wrong for Toronto, and when I thought it even harmed people, including when the mayor and council refused to open warming centers when people were freezing outside last winter. So the approach that I'm going to take is to focus on safety, affordability, livability, improving services, and I'm going to be working with my colleagues to achieve that agenda that I will have a mandate for as Mayor of Toronto.
Thank you. Mitzi, what's the biggest misconception about you or your campaign?
Yeah, so I've heard it said that I have not worked at City Hall and have no experience there. That's actually not true. I was at the Toronto Community Housing Corporation as the Chief Administrative Officer, and I definitely reported through to the City Manager and Mayor's office and understand how City Hall works. Yet, I bring a fresh set of eyes and new perspective that is so needed right now at City Council. When we, as Torontonians, you can ask yourself 3 questions. Who's been transparent? Who brings the commitment and the experience? And who brings change and represents change? That is what I bring. I've resigned my seat as the MPP. I have no old job to go back to. I'm all in because I firmly believe that we need a generational change at City Hall. We need to do things differently, and we have the opportunity to do that on June 26th, and that's why I'm asking for your support as mayor. We cannot go along with the same old that has got us into this mess. We need to do things differently, and that's what I will bring as mayor.
Thank you, Mitzi. Thank you, Mitzi. Thank you all for dispelling those misconceptions about yourselves and your campaigns. Now, I know we're kind of almost at the end of the night, and your boy over here likes to switch it up a little bit. So I do have one last question, okay? Because I do want to end on a lighter note. I thought we've had a pretty good vibe here, right? So here's the question. If you could or had to grab a drink, could be a beer, could be a smoothie, okay, with one of your opponents tonight, who would it be, why, and where would you go? And just because I'm a little bit nosy, what drink would you get? Now, we're not counting down the clock on this one, but we would appreciate if you could each keep your responses short and sweet. Mitzi, we're going to start off with you.
Okay, so I know I was thinking about this, and I do want to say thank you to you and your team. I thought you guys did a great job tonight in having us here. And Chloe, I would love to have a drink with you at, my favorite place in Scarborough is the Energy Shack, and I would personally have a brain booster, which is filled with blueberries and nuts, lots of nice things, and it's just one of the best smoothies. So hopefully you'll join me.
And why Chloe?
Oh, I love her her perspective. I believe that she is bringing a clarity around the solutions that she is offering in this race, and I would love to just compare notes, talk about the work that I've done, and I think that we would just have an enjoyable time.
Thank you, Mitzi. All right, Chloe, you're actually up next.
I don't know, like I don't pick favorites. Everyone's invited, it's open invite.
But you have to choose one person. And it doesn't have to be your favorite. It could be anybody.
I don't have favorites. Objectively, like I would take anyone who wants to sit with me. This is a really tough question. I'll return the favor to Mitzi because she picked me first.
Sure.
I would enjoy like a Johnny Walker Red with ginger ale. And my favorite bar right now is Ace Hotel. Really love a good rooftop patio to look out at Toronto Gotham. So that's how I go.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Chloe. Anthony.
This is a tough one, just because, you got to pick someone. Okay, I'm going to say this. Father of 3 small kids, so I don't really go out much anymore. My house is always a mess. I'm going to pick Brad because I know he just lives around the corner from me. He has 2 little kids as well. And I can be like, we don't have to go far because, you don't have to leave. I don't go out much. And then I can be like, just come over to my messy house because I'm going to assume his house is messy as well. I don't know. And then it'll be like, okay, we can just have a can of beer and accept the fact that we have like messy dad life. Does that work?
I love it.
And interestingly enough, Brad, you're actually up next.
So this is funny because my wife always gets concerned when our friends come over. It's like, oh, the big tidy episode. I'm like, they have kids too. Everybody's house is a disaster. Just relax. Like, it's not a big deal. House is a disaster. So I would like that, and we are pretty close by neighbors. But this is awkward because I was going to pick Chloe, but then you didn't pick me. I feel like we're on a dating show. No, we'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do that. Okay. But I wanted to pick Chloe because Chloe is the only one here who has run for mayor before. And so I would actually like to learn from you about your experience and what that was like just a few short months ago, because now we're having another election. So I was thinking we could sit down. We also haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time together on the campaign trail, and so I was like, oh, like I could probably learn a lot from Chloe. She seems super smart. Sounds like maybe we could go to Rexdale. I didn't know you were from Rexdale, and it sounds like we're having Johnny Walker Red Label blended Scotch with some ginger. I'm fine with that, although I'm more of a pints guy. But like whatever you want, we'll go and do it. And either way, we should do that, and we should have a beer. And actually, we may have had beers at different times. I like everybody.
House party.
House party. Let's do it. We can do it right here. Josh, you got to answer this question.
All right, the pressure's on.
Who are you going to choose?
Well, I would definitely pick Brandon.
No.
That's a good one.
I'm not running for mayor. I'm interviewing a potential.
So you're the one who isn't, huh?
Yeah.
Honestly, there are a lot of people on the stage who I would love to have a drink with, and I appreciate spending time with people who have views that are different than my own. But I would actually, if I had to pick one, like right now, it would be Mitzi, and I'll tell you why. Mitzi and I have had some tense moments on debate stages, and literally we're at each other. And
I was right there.
You were like right there, yeah. But I also.
But they're not tense off stage, Josh.
Yeah,
they're very good.
No. Literally, it's just on stage, and then we're like, cool, as soon as we leave. But I really do believe that we share some very basic values together, and I have a lot of respect for Mitzi, and I have a lot of respect for many of the ideas that we share. So I really,
Sounds like an endorsement there. Coming from
it's let's put it this way, it is definitely a support of you as a person, and maybe by the end of the drink you would endorse me.
Good one, that's good.
Ranked ballots. Ranked ballots with self-defense.
Rank balance.
Look at that. Look at that. Which other debate has done this?
They're going to fix the Liberal Party together.
And a bomb right there. Listen, and I think that's the perfect note to conclude the debate this evening. I see a lot of smiles here, which I'm happy to see. We like to smile over here. But I want to thank all of you, seriously, for being here, because you showed up. You had the courage to show up for an open debate, and for the people of this city who are looking for a strong leader, whichever direction you choose to go. Not everybody had the courage to show up, and you guys did, so we want to thank you. Thank you, Mitzi Hunter, Anthony Fury, Brad Bradford, Chloe Brown, and Josh Matlow. And thanks to all the teams behind the scenes. Shout out to the BG Show team, shout out to the Now Toronto team, the entire GMI team, our extended teams, as well as the candidates teams too. I mean, they all made this happen. Most of all, thank you. All of you who tuned in and submitted your questions. Thank you for taking an interest, and I hope you all go out and vote next week on Monday the 26th. And not just you, we're talking your family, we're talking your friends, even your ops. Okay? Invite them out too. That's opponents. Okay? It's a privilege we have in this country that we cannot take for granted. Your vote matters. It makes all the difference in the world for Toronto's future now. Let's start the live scrum segment, where reporters will now get to pose questions to the candidates, and you get to watch it all unfold live. So just give us a few minutes to transition, and we're going to actually go in the order that they're sitting in right now. So Mitzi, you're going to go first. But thank you all again for watching.
Well, I believe that the poll that matters ultimately is the one that happens on June the 26th, and that's the poll that I'm looking forward to. I believe that this is a change election. I believe that people are looking for something that is different. We're not looking to go backwards or what was done in the 90s. I believe that the council agenda needs to be about 2023 and the future of our city, and I represent what's happening now and the future, and that's what I believe. And I've been talking to Torontonians right across the city, and they're really looking for real solutions and a real plan, and I've made that available. I've put that forward well before voting began, and I believe that we need those solutions right now to fix our city, to fix the things that really matter, like affordable housing, and making sure that young people who grow up in Toronto can see themselves living here in our city, and that the city is not priced out for everyone but the wealthy. I also believe that there are other concerns in our city, like getting transit moving, building more transit across our city to connect our city, as well as dealing with the immediate transit issue, which is that ridership is down and people don't feel safe on the TTC. We've got to have those answers when people ask, and I've been very straight with the voters. And so I believe that it's time for a generational change, and that's why I'm running. I'm part of that change, and I offer real solutions to the issues that we face in our city right now.
Speaking of Election Day, if you were to head to the polls and you weren't able to vote for yourself, who would you be voting for?
Oh, wow, that's a very challenging question here now. Maybe I would vote for Josh, maybe. He was really nice in his endorsement of me tonight, and so I'd think about it.
And who do you think won the debate tonight?
Actually, I thought tonight was a very fair debate. I thought we had an opportunity to put forward our different points of view. I certainly felt that I was able to do that, and I also listened to what others were saying, and just thought it was a really great debate, and the voters really had a chance to hear from all of us as candidates. I think what was very unfortunate is that three of the other candidates that are leading in polls, and even the one that is supposed to be out in front in the polls, didn't bother to show up to tonight's debate. And so the audience had no opportunity to hear from them or to challenge them on the fact. For instance, Olivia Chow has not been open and transparent and honest with voters by telling her how much she would raise property taxes by. Anna Bailao has, put forward a pretty unrealistic plan for how she's going to pay for her plan by hoping that Doug Ford is going to upload the Gardner and the DVP. And Mark Saunders, he actually believes that only the private sector can build housing. And that is really a recipe for more of the same unaffordable housing in Toronto that we have right now. We didn't have a chance to hear from them about those perspectives 1 week before voting begins on June the 26th. And I think that that's a disservice to the voters. And if they're not going to show up for important conversations and debate, why are they even running for mayor to begin with?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mitzi. How are you?
I am very well, thanks.
So my first question to you is, if elected mayor, will you use the straw mayor powers?
No, I've been really clear about that from the very beginning. Just recently, I resigned my seat as the MPP, and in the provincial legislature, I spoke out very strongly against doing anything that really diminishes our democracy and, taking away the voices of people who elect their local councillors in Scarborough or Etobicoke, North York, East York, Midtown, downtown is wrong, and I opposed that when Premier Doug Ford introduced that particular legislation, and I don't believe that it serves us well. I believe that what we should be doing is working together to set the priorities on council, the citywide priorities, and for me as mayor, I would support local priorities as well. That's why I introduced here in the debate at now, and the Brandon Gonez Show that as mayor, I would move the council meetings around our city to the former boroughs so that all councillors get to experience what it's like in that local community, and for the local community to have a closer watch at what council meetings are like. And it's something that is simple to do, but it does reset that agenda. And one of the things that I want to do is to bring the outside in City Hall and City Council, and that's what I look forward to doing, is for a city that works for everyone everywhere. And I can't do that if I'm going to be using these draconian powers and diminishing the voice of our local democracy, of our locally elected councillors.
Well, thank you so much, Mitzi.
Thanks.
We're going to move on to Anthony.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks everyone, and remember to vote on June the 26th, and I am number 55 on the ballot, right in the center, two-thirds of the way down. Thank you.
Ask a different question next.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Anthony.
Hi, how are you?
How are you doing?
Doing great, thank you.
How do you feel you did in this debate? I mean, I know you were feeling attacked at some point.
No, not at all. Certainly happy to take all questions on the debate stage because, I'm pretty passionate about the city, passionate about the issues. So I love any opportunity I can to go out and sell my vision for this great city. So it was another great opportunity. Whether it's knocking on doors, as I'm doing all across the city. And, they say when you run for mayor, you can't do the door canvassing, you can't do the door knocking. The city's just too big. And I say, just watch me. And that's what I've been doing. I know I'm not going to get to every street, but I've certainly been going to as many doors as I can. So whether it's the door knocking or meeting people at events or opportunities like this to engage with the voter, I welcome all aspects of it.
Sticking to some traditional tactics, I see.
Yeah, you got it.
So if elected mayor of Toronto, what would be your first priority?
Well, I've been pretty clear that as mayor, I want to phase out those drug injection sites and replace them with treatment centers, because now is a time for choosing. I don't want the city to look any more like those awful scenes in Seattle and San Francisco, downtown Vancouver. So I'm going to really focus on that on day one. I also want to begin that program review immediately. So we take a look at everything City Hall is doing, all our spending, and make sure we refocus things to go back to basics and make sure that everything City Hall's doing and spending people's hard-earned taxpayer dollars on are things that people would agree are the services that they expect out of City Hall. No more pet projects, no more fills. We got to go back to basics to ensure that police are there when you need them, that the potholes are being fixed, that the subway's working, and that it's clean.
Hi, and I just wanted to ask, who would you say won tonight's mayoral debate?
I don't know. I'm pretty biased on that. So I feel like I guess I did an okay job. Any opportunity for me to go out and sell my passion for the city. I always say, as the father of 3 small kids, I'm out there fighting for my family. I'm out there fighting for all Toronto families to make this city a better place.
And on election day, if you went to the polls and you weren't allowed to vote for yourself, do you know who you would vote for?
Well, look, the reasons I'm running for mayor right now are because of where this city's at right now, and the issues that I am out there fighting for are ones that, I didn't just make up from polling or from focus groups. These issues I was writing about in the papers, talking about on talk radio in my capacity as a broadcaster before we even knew there'd be an election. So I can't really imagine this election without me running for it, because I'm just so passionate about the issue. So I knew I would be on the ballot.
But of the 101 other candidates, who would you vote for?
That's an unfair question to ask. I understand there's a really cute dog running for mayor, Molly the dog. So I guess I'd pick her then. Otherwise, so.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? We're good? Okay, I think that's it.
All right, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to earning Torontonians' trust on June 22nd. And I can tell you it was just great to see those poll numbers come out today that showed me in a statistical tie for second place. We got another week left, and my commitment to my supporters is that I'm going to be out there every day just working hard to win over more and more votes, because I believe that still anything's possible in this last week. I know this city. I love this city. I believe Toronto's worth fighting for, and we can fix this. So have a good evening, everyone.
So obviously when we look at the polls, we see that Olivia Chow is currently leading. If she were to win this election, how would you feel?
Like the next day is Tuesday. I've been through so many campaigns as a volunteer, now twice as a mayoral candidate. This is officially a year since the last one. So, it's just another day in the empire.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And who would you say, in your opinion, won tonight's debate?
I'm biased. It's me. I really think I focused on answering the questions objectively. I didn't rely on too many anecdotes about my family and my past experience. I really just focused on answering the question, and that's really what the voters want.
And if there was another candidate you would vote for, who would it be if you couldn't vote for you next Monday?
Ooh. Man, I might just spoil my ballot because who's better than me? Joking, that's pure ego. I would vote for, I want to say Selena. Selena's actually been really on the ground, grassroots candidate, speaking to the issues, and whenever I see her, she's been very objective with her responses as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Chloe.
Hey.
Hi. So this is your second time running for mayor. Tell me, how has it been?
Oh my God, longest interview of my life so far. As I said, it's been a year since the last election, so I had very little time to analyze the data from the last time and turn it into something else. But with my really great team behind me, I think people have seen the rapid development of the policy ideas into products, and now they're seeing the end of it. So it's you as the public have been a part of a policy experiment. Look what happens when you engage. The tone of discourse has changed, the language that we're using. So I really hope that this time around people felt like it was a civic engagement as opposed to a popularity chase. So yeah, I was more invested in civic education this time. Social media presence is insane, and it's actually really flattering. I went to a school and these kids wanted my autograph, and I'm like, I'm a nobody.
Okay, so now similar to the lightning round, can you tell us 3 reasons why Torontonians should vote for you? 3 that comes to mind.
So I'm a policy analyst that's actually been on the front line of program services, and I've been a part of analyzing them, evaluating them, sending recommendations to government, and I'm deeply familiar with how our governance system is broken. The issue has never been about whether or not we have money. It's the allocation and who it goes to, and it's always the working class that's getting left out. I've been advocating for democracy for the working class since last year. My message hasn't changed. Instead, it's inspired more democracy. You're seeing all these social media accounts calling out former counselors and their records. So people are engaged, and that's why they should vote for me. You will stay engaged in the civic process. You will see transparency and accountability in real time as opposed to down the line. And this is something that I'm promising as someone who's been at city council during the Rob Ford era. I've run against Michael Ford. I've run against John Tory. Send a machine my way because I'm not afraid, and I've proven it over and over. Everyone else is playing theater. I'm in the policy arena.
You're used to the big competition.
It's competitive if you're unskilled. I'm a very skilled policy analyst. I've been doing this work. I've been giving recommendations to the government. The issue is the starting ensemble of counselors. They need to be coached to be better. So far, all they're really good at is chasing popularity, but when it comes time to governance, they fail. There is no work product for any of them to claim as successful or effectively delivered. And I'm saying that about all of the other candidates because, yes, they have the experience of sitting at council over me, but where's the work product? They had billions of dollars at their disposal. Violence is up, homelessness is up. They've done more to advance poverty than to reduce it. So vote for the candidate that's been invested in making sure that the working class has assets and a trust fund that they can rely on in my absence.
So you're saying you've been in the game, you understand it, you know the players.
Yeah, and this is why I say that people are tired of political theater. They want inside the policy arena where there's actual power being bartered and created every day. Right now, the reason why our city is in decay is because John Tory and his allies and the rest of council has been invested in looking busy as opposed to reducing the workload. And this is where, yeah, as the working class candidate, I've been advocating to give the working class land, their data, control over their lives and the processes that inform it. And this is why policy is so important to my message, because a lot of the issues we're experiencing right now is because of outdated policy. Policy has not been updated since my parents have been youths, and now they're seniors. This is why our city doesn't work for young people. It's sending them away, and seniors are unable to keep their kids here, despite their best efforts.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer questions.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys.
We're very, very close to the election. If you were to head to the ballots on voting day and you weren't able to vote for yourself, do you know who you would be voting for?
I would vote for somebody who would put forward a plan that is truly costed, that they can deliver a plan to pay for it, that focuses on safety, on affordability, on improving our services. And if somebody could come forward with a plan that I genuinely believe that the math adds up, that addresses the fact that we have a $1.5 billion shortfall, a massive budget pressure that we're facing, and a need to manage our budget better so that we can deliver those services, they would earn my support. Thus far, I haven't seen any other campaign do it other than mine.
Now, at this point, mayoral candidate Olivia Chow is leading in the polls. If she were to win this race, how would you feel?
Well, I think I would feel best, obviously, if I won, because I believe in the plan that I'm putting forward. The reality is, whether it be Olivia Chow or Mark Saunders, neither of them have put forward a plan that has the math add up. In other words, they both announced a whole bunch of things, but they haven't demonstrated how they can deliver on the promises. And one of the biggest reasons that the city is in a financial mess, the reason why our services have declined over the years, and I believe actually the reason why so many people are apathetic and cynical and they don't vote anymore, is because they don't believe any of this stuff. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of politicians pandering in every election, telling us everything we want to hear, but having no realistic way to pay for it and deliver it. So, I'd be disappointed if anyone was elected who just thought that they could manipulate the public into voting for them based on hopes and dreams or good stories or the idea of what they might do, but rather than the substance of what they can deliver. And I have a plan that even has some of the top economists in Canada, like Kevin Page, who was the first parliamentary budget officer, who has said that my plan actually works. So I'm not just running to win an election, I'm running to fix this city. And I've heard too many times, we've all experienced this, that the city doesn't feel as safe as it used to be. People cannot afford the rent. They cannot afford even the dream of having to buy a home. And ultimately the services, whether it be snow clearing to road repair to park maintenance, to helping our most vulnerable who are in our parks and on our streets, we need to do better, and I have a plan to do it.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Josh.
Hello.
So tell me, how do you think you feel about the debate? Like, how do you think you did?
I thought actually this was one of the more thoughtful debates. There was less interrupting, less sort of jumping down each other's throats, and more of an opportunity to actually discuss issues that people are affected by, people care about. And I felt that I, contributed in that thoughtful spirit. I felt very comfortable.
Are you sure about that less interrupting, though? Because I noticed you had a few heated exchanges with Anthony Furey. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I mean, it's all relative, meaning that many of the debates have been to a level where, frankly, the listener or the viewer couldn't even make out what people were saying. Tonight was different. There really was more thoughtful conversation. But yes, I mean, when Anthony Furey or Mark Saunders uses hyperbole that's divisive, or is untrue, I do have a responsibility to call them on it, because the reality is, the more that we, for example, we we agree that there shouldn't be needles in our parks. We agree that encampments aren't the answer to homelessness. But for him to just, rather than focus on solutions the way that I am, but simply just to scream up in the air and villainize people with addictions is ethically wrong. And yes, I have a responsibility to challenge that behavior.
So if elected mayor, what would be your first priority?
My first priority would be to deal with the budget shortfall. Anything that we care about, whether it be improving safety and reliability and service on the TTC, whether it be improving our roads, whether it be helping our most vulnerable, whether it be improving the basic services that we rely on every single day, ensuring that people have better access to affordable housing. If we don't have a budget under control, we're not going to be able to do that. Now, the last mayor, regardless of how he resigned, what's important for us to deal with today is that the budget was left with a $1.5 billion shortfall. And the reserves were rated to cover up that shortfall this year. So any mayor who really cares about improving this city, making it a city that works for everyone in this city, will have to, maybe enjoy the victory night briefly, but then get to work the very next morning on fixing the budget. Because if we don't have a budget that's managed well, if we don't have a better deal with the provincial and the federal governments, if we don't get real about what revenue we're going to need to bring in, then services will continue to decline, and that's not something that I'm going to accept or allow.
So you're saying you need to fix the foundation first?
Absolutely. It's so easy for these candidates to just say they're going to, every kid is going to get a unicorn, and all the streets are going to get paved with gold, and everyone's going to be happy if they're mayor. And that's why we're in this problem. I mean, this is why we're in this budget hole, because until we actually have an honest conversation about what it will take, whether it be revenue, better budget management, or a new deal with the other governments, until we actually are honest about what it will take to fix our city, then things will continue to decline. And the problems and the challenges that Toronto are facing are too serious to play political games with, or for people just to vote for somebody who might have some name recognition or have political parties sending in, workers for them, or, others who literally have Doug Ford's endorsement. I mean, that's not good enough. We need to actually get real about our city.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Right. Good job, guys.
Alrighty, and thank you all. That concludes our live scrums. We want to thank every one of our viewers for tuning in, and remember to subscribe to the Now Toronto and the BG Show YouTube channels. Take care.